Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm gonna do my first Q&A. So, today is my second year anniversary on Booktube. I've been making videos for 2 years. My first video was a book haul from a library book sale. I'll have a big one up for you in another day or two after you see this. Sorry, I'm going to answer some questions. I just got a few from my video asking for questions. So this won't take too long, but I just thought it'd be kind of fun and you get to know a little bit more about me from what other people are asking. So I'm just gonna go into this. So again, the first question was one I knew would be asked. It says, how come Amy became Zoe Beck and who is Zoe? So my channel name is Zoe Beck, and I decided to keep this name even though it is not my name. Technically, Zoe Beck is the name I used as a college student as my drinking nickname when we went out. My friends and I picked names so that people couldn't find us later. Anyway, I know that's bad. Point is, I use that as my writing pseudonym, you know, as in that was the name I was going to use if I published anything that I didn't want my mother to read. So Zoe Beck to me is kind of like that alter ego. It was kind of like that younger, funner self, and also my writing counterpart kind of thing. So I don't have any plans to actually publish. It was just kind of a joke. And but when I signed up for YouTube, it asked for, you know, your email address, and so I used my email address that I used that I had set up for my writing, which I used Zoe Beck. So that became the name. And then when I decided to start making videos, I had to decide if I was going to change it, and it was just so much of a hassle that I went, oh, forget it. I'm just going to keep it at Zoe Beck and just move on. And so I did. So that's the story. I picked Zoe because it was one of my favorite names when I was you know, early 20s. I think I'd read it in a couple of books and I really liked it. And then Beck comes from a different spelling of a family member's last name. I just changed the spelling. So it was just kind of short and sweet. It was a short name. I have a short name, so it kind of matched. It's a little different. Anyway, so I hope that answers your question. I know that's kind of odd that I say that, but I just, that's what I did. Anyway, it was a decision I made 2 years ago and I'm sticking with it. Well, yeah. So question number 2 I had was, is there a favorite country outside of the US, like places I've been? So I have traveled pretty extensively earlier in my life, not really recently. I haven't had time or money, really, mostly money. But like I've been to Australia and Norway and Ireland and the Bahamas, and I went somewhere else. I'm gonna forget. And so I was in England for a little bit too, not really, but kind of. So but my favorite place happens to be Australia, because one of my best friends lives there, and so the couple times I went to visit her, that was really cool because I got to see a lot of the country. She lived on the East Coast, so she was outside of Sydney the first time I went, and then now both times I was there, she lived north of Sydney, and then later she's moved south. So I've seen quite a bit from Sydney down to Melbourne and back and through that area. So it was really cool. So it is one of my favorite places I would like to go back again to see her. So I would consider that my other favorite country. So anyway, so which country would you like to, let's see here, visit the most and why? And I also got one of, if I could travel anywhere in the world, where would I pick? So I think those are kind of close. I think I'm going to say on the first one, which country would I most like to visit and why? Right now, I would really like to go to, do Scotland and England, like, extensively and get to see a lot of that. I didn't get to, I went to Ireland once and I kind of drove through Wales. So that would be kind of cool to go there. And I think it would be kind of cool to actually go to Scotland. I didn't go there. And then England, I was in London for a day, which was not enough. So I would like to do a whole like area all through that. That would just be really fun. But if I could travel anywhere in the world, where would I pick? I have two places. I know I'm supposed to pick just one, but I don't care. So if I could pick someplace and it didn't matter about money or anything going on in the world, I would like to go to Greece. I just have a fascination with Greece from Mary Stewart books. I will blame those forever, especially my brother Michael. But I've always been fascinated by all the Greek stuff, the Pantheon and all the Delphi and all, you know, like those kind of things. I mean, Italy would be cool that way too, but I don't know, Greece would be really cool. But I'd also really want to go to New Zealand. I admit I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. My parents got to go a couple of years ago and I was so jealous because I didn't have any money. They went with a lot of senior citizens. It wouldn't have been fun for me, but it was still like, oh, I want to go. So all those are on my bucket list. I want to go to all those places at some point, hopefully soon. Who knows? So what, question number, I think it's 5. What do you do when you're not reading? Well, I mostly work and then I sleep and watch a lot of Booktube. My only really other hobby is writing, and even though I don't do it a lot right now, I would really like to do it a lot more. I would like to try to get it back into my habits of doing it much more often than I'm doing it now. It is something I do love to do. So it's just for fun at this point, of course, as I've said. But that is the only, those reading and writing are kind of my big hobbies. I'm not very crafty, or I like to play with notebooks and things, but I think that's part of the writer in me that does that too. But I'm not artistic at all that way. I mean, I do like to write, but you know. So that's the answer to that one. So number 6 is, what were your favorite books when you're, what are your favorite books from your childhood and teenage years? So my childhood, I would say I was huge. I mean, Nancy Drew was huge for me. Mysteries, that was when I really started liking mysteries. I would say the first book that I was in love with was The Boxcar Children by Gertrude something Warner. I don't have a copy of it. I've never owned it. I got it from the library at my school library and read it multiple times while I was going to grade school. But Nancy Drew was really much I would say my gateway into, you know, getting into really more, going from the younger to older books, because then I was introduced to Agatha Christie at 12, and that pretty much just blew my mind, and I went to adult books, but I did read a lot of horror too during that period. Christopher Pike, who else? I was just thinking about, well, I'd read a little R.L. Stein, but not a lot. Like, I was just Fear Street. That was all that was out when I was reading it. But mostly it was, Christopher Pike was huge for me. So, but after about 13, 14, I went like almost completely into adult books. My cousin gave me a sack of books that had David Eddings' Belgariad series. I got all these Necroscope series from Brian Lumley. He blew my mind. Anyway, and then of course I got tons of Stephen King's and Dean Koontz books. And so I went down the rabbit hole of horror and epic fantasy, probably starting from there. And that's kind of continued. And as I said, I read a lot of other stuff too, but those are mostly, in my teenage years, I did pick up some classics. So as I said, I read Three Musketeers on my own and Pride and Prejudice. And there was one more, which I can't think of right now, of course. Oh, I know I read another one. But everything else, you know, as I said, it all influences later on, don't you think? So those are, I don't know if that was good enough. But I read all those. Anyway. Let's see here. What is number 7? How did you get into Booktube? So I didn't know Booktube existed until around Christmas time of 2016. I actually went down the rabbit hole of planners. I found out about traveling notebooks and bullet journaling and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and then I kind of found AuthorTube through a couple who did some people that did both, and then I kind of found Booktube through that, and I just kind of journeyed through that for about 4.5 months before I decided to make my own channel. I was kind of nervous to do this because I don't know, not everybody has that personality, and I mean, again, I'm not huge channels, so you understand, like, this is just me and this is how it is, and it was hard for me to actually, you know, get in front of the camera and do that. And at the time I started with my computer camera because it was better than my phone. Anyway, so that was kind of it. I just got into it. I just decided that was the community I wanted to be involved with, and I thought doing that would be fun. And it has been 2 years. Yay! Number 8, if you could have any other pets, what would it be? So I have 2 cats, Cooper and Truman, who are racing around here because I just got home and I come in. I sit in front of this, which is not their favorite thing. If I could have another pet, wow, and I'm guessing they don't mean another cat. Because if I have 3, then I'm a crazy cat lady, but I only have 2, so it doesn't count yet. If not another cat, I would probably get a dog. I don't have much experience with dogs other than my friends have always had dogs. We grew up with cats, my brother and I, and so that's what we have and that's what we know. But I have a lot of people who have dogs, so I would like a big dog. I'm more attracted to them. They're just big, like a black lab, or a German Shepherd or something like that. Like, I don't know. For some reason, I like those dogs. My grandmother loves St. Bernards. She had St. Bernards when she was a kid, and she just loves them. But that's a little too big for me. So I'll go a little smaller than that. Anyway, question number 9 is, if you could interview any author, dead or alive, who would you interview and why? So this is really hard. Because again, there's probably a lot of authors I would like to talk to, dead or alive. Like, I mean, it would be kind of interesting to hear. I would like to hear how snarky Jane Austen really was, and I would kind of like to talk to Elizabeth Peters, who wrote the Amelia Peabody mystery series, because she also wrote nonfiction, I think, in archaeology, and I think that would be fascinating to listen to, hear what, you know, like real stuff that she knew about. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people you would want to talk to. I think I would get stage fright and I wouldn't know what to say. I'd probably be sitting there going, I don't know what to ask. Like, I would think of like a million things afterwards, but beforehand, I don't know if I would. I would just be too in awe, probably. Not that I think that authors are to be awed at. If they were especially one of my favorites, I don't know if I would be able to come up with stuff. I mean, I would be more wanting to compliment most of them because I love their world building, or I love their characters, or I love their descriptions of things, or, you know, I find something of their process that I wish I could do. Or I don't know. Wow. But I'm going to go with, I would like to talk to Jane Austen and Elizabeth Peters. I think that would be different. I don't know. Maybe not. Not the Jane Austen, but the Elizabeth Peters. Sorry. Let's see here. How many places have you lived, and was it always on the West Coast? So, when I counted how many apartments and houses I'd lived in, I'd come up with 16, which was kind of hilarious. But I've lived in 3 states. Well, okay, technically 4. Here we go. So I grew up, was born in Oregon, and I spent my whole childhood here. So at 19, I went to college in Minnesota. I lived out in Mankato, went to Mankato State University. I know now it's University of Minnesota at Mankato, but it was Mankato State University when I was there. Think Little House on the Prairie. That's where it was. Anyway, so I went there for a couple of years. But I also had a residence, like my address, at my grandmother's house, who lives in Iowa. So I was just outside of a small town called Emmons, Minnesota, but my grandmother lives on the Iowa state line, and her mailbox was in Minnesota. And her house, all the property is in Iowa. So I lived there during the breaks. So technically, my address was there while I was going to college when I wasn't at college. Does that make sense? Anyway, So those three. And then I moved back to Oregon. So I, back to my parents' house for a little bit. And then I went back to college. I'm finished, because I transferred that year. So I finished out college, and then I moved to Portland. And then, I went to Eugene. I went to Oregon, or University of Oregon. Yeah. So this is a funny story. So I'm a house divided because I grew up in Corrales, which is Oregon State University. But I went to University of Oregon for college because I didn't want to live at home. For the last year and a half, I had to finish up. So, oh yeah. So I'm the oddball of my family. Anyway, so after I moved from Eugene, I moved up to Portland for a couple of years. Then I transferred to Sacramento, California for my job. And I stayed there for 12 years until they closed the plant. And then I moved back to Portland, and I live with my, luckily my grandparents lived in Portland, so I stayed with them until I got another job, and then I moved out. So I now live in Beaverton in my lovely house. Actually a duplex that I share with my brother. We're not on the same side. My brother lives on the other side. I live over here. We are perfectly fine with that divide. We text each other. We don't call each other or knock on each other's doors unexpectedly. We call. Well, we text. So maybe that was a little bit more than you need to know, but so let's just say it. So that's 4 states, but I've moved a lot. I've definitely done my moving. I'm happy to stay here now. This is where I want to stay, and for now, this is a great living situation, and I really like it here. I mean, the only thing I wish I had a few more walls so I could put a few more bookcases up, but that's just me. So I have not lived always on the West Coast. See, I lived in the Midwest for a little while, but mostly the West Coast. So number 11 was you mentioned you write. So what genre do you write? So I've dabbled in all genres. I've written some really soft sci-fi, and I've written some just contemporary stuff, and I've written most of my writing I would classify as urban fantasy or speculative fiction. So most of it's urban fantasy though, which is pretty much, for me, it has a supernatural element of some sort. And so the world is like everything today, and except for one little twist of magic or creatures or of some sort. And those are my favorite stories to read and to write. Mostly to write though. I admit I've kind of put aside my reading of it quite so much, which is why my love of the others is so great, because it's something I just totally love, and that's exactly what I wish I could write, was how her world was and how her characters, that big cast of characters. That's a huge deal for me. I love big cast of characters, which is why I don't write short stories. My short stories are accidental novels. So even my, short stories to me are considered short novels, which is, anyway. So, but as I said, I'm trying to get back into that. And as I said, my go-to genre is urban fantasy. Even the fluctuations of what the market does and what books are good or bad in that period, it doesn't matter. Those are the stories that I think about, and that's what I make up, and that's what I like to do. Anyway, I like to torture my characters. And then number 12, I had a question for a tour of my hometown. And Jackie, I'm not sure if you mean my hometown that I'm living in now or the one I grew up in. So I don't have anything for that right now, but you'll have to let me know. But that's all the questions I had. Luckily, I didn't go super long, but I hope that answers anything. I don't know. Everything. I don't know. As I said, I'm not maybe not all as interesting as other people, but this is my life, and I have done things, even though I joke about that I don't. It's just, and I guess when I start thinking about how many times I've moved, that's kind of funny, and places I've been and where I want to go is kind of neat. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for the questions. Those of you who gave them to me, I really appreciate that. Those who watch my channel, thank you so much for all that. I know I don't always say that. I don't like that whole spiel about the subscribe and like and all that stuff. I don't say that mostly because that just drives me crazy. Hey, if you want to, you can. Point is, I'm not going to be asking you for that ever. I don't want to do that. I don't put pressure like that on anybody, and I really don't like it when I have to hear it all the time either. But that's just my personal opinion. Maybe I shouldn't have ended it like that, but I'm just trying to tell you that this is me and this is kind of how it is. So anyway, thank you again so much, and hope you guys are all having a nice day, and hopefully more good booktube videos will be coming in your future. Bye!